Hello, in this video we're going to look at part 3 of the listening paper in the Cambridge English Advanced exam. Part 3 is the multiple choice listening. It's the longest piece of listening in the whole test, and it's quite a challenge in terms of keeping track of where you are. For this video, as with the others in this series, you'll need a copy of the PDF and the MP3s that are linked to in the description below. So if you haven't downloaded those yet, please do that now. We'll be using those as we go through the example. We're looking at sample 2, and for the multiple choice here, we'll be listening to two people called Tessa Payne and Ryan Moss. So, what can you do to succeed at this part of the test? I don't think there's much time before you start listening to really read all of the questions very carefully, but you should try to take a look at them. There are 6 questions here, and you should be familiar with the first 4 at least before the listening begins. Some people actually find it useful not to look at the options at all, but only listen to the information around the question. Try to answer it for themselves and then find the answer which fits closest to their guess. That's not a bad technique, and it might work for you. But in terms of management of the task, when you're listening for a particular question, keep an eye on the next question, because if you lose your place, if they start talking about the next question and you don't realize it, you could suddenly find yourself completely lost. This is similar to the reading multiple choice, where you have a long text. The answers appear in order with the questions, so you can use that as a navigational tool. Of course, in the reading you can't do that. You can't realize suddenly that you're on to the next question and go back in the listening. So it's really critical that you're aware of where you are in the listening at all times. So what should you do as you listen? As with every part of the listening test, you have to listen for synonymous expressions. The words used in both the question and the answers won't be the same as what you hear in the listening. Also look carefully at the kind of language that is used in the question. If somebody says something, of course you'll be listening for their direct speech. But if there is something like regret or reveal, these will be marked in a different way. Some of the questions might ask you to see where the two speakers agree, in which case you need to listen for what both of them say. If only one person mentions something and the other doesn't respond to it, or they contradict what they hear, then that doesn't show agreement. Okay, so try the task, listen twice, remember those little tips that I've suggested, and when you're ready, come back and we'll have a look at the answers together. Okay, so let's take a look together. For number 15, Tessa feels that it's important to teach runners meditation strategies because these promote a focus on good technique. When we listen, she talks about meditation and she says this allows runners to clear their minds and visualize how they want to run smoothly without pushing too hard initially. So this is the technique side of things. She doesn't use the word technique, but she does talk about how they run and about it being smoothly without pushing too hard, and this is their technique, so we can listen around that language. For number 16, the answer we want is C. Ryan believes many kids in the USA stop participating in sport because they feel under too much pressure to win. Now it's quite useful for us that the speakers have switched here for the question, because it's a bit like in the reading where you're looking at different paragraphs. First we heard from Tessa, and now we hear from Ryan. When Ryan starts speaking, we know that we've had our chance to find Tessa's answer and we can move on. But we need to be careful of question 17, because 17 is still about Ryan. So we'll need to listen for that whole paragraph of what he says to 2 answers. So keeping an eye on 17 whilst you look at 16 means that you'll know where you are in the listening. So anyway, as I said, 16, the answer we want is C. He says, talking about the coaches and parents, from them comes the obsession with coming first, which actually burns kids out and turns them off just when they should be getting started. So he uses a couple of phrasal verbs here, to burn out and to turn somebody off something. And this is the idea of not wanting to participate. And then if we look at number 17, the answer we want is D. Ryan reveals that he's concerned how little attention they pay to less participants when he's talking about these high school programs. The answer comes towards the end of his turn talking. He says every athlete has a contribution to make, and that includes those that haven't a hope of getting on the medals boards. They learn from each other, in my view. So that comes, that's talking about how even people who are not very good at sport can still make an impact on other people. But right at the beginning of what he says, when he answers this question, there's a distraction for C. C was, he's pleased that they may involve more young people in running. They say, well, the interviewer says, there's a lot of emphasis today on creating what are known as elite high school sports programs. What's your view on this, Ryan? And he originally says, well, on paper they look fantastic. So that's a bit of a distraction. If you know the expression on paper, this means kind of in theory, but maybe not, probably not in practice. So that's our clue to listen further. So don't be too easily distracted. For number 18, the answer we want is A. What has Tessa learned through her own experience of running races? Competitors can be seen as an asset. She says, running teaches you to see your competitors as partners. A partner is an asset, it's something beneficial. And then for question 19, what is the focus of Tessa's recent book on sports psychology? She talks for a very long time about her book. You almost wonder if her ego is a little bit large here, but that happens with a lot of writers. Finally, she does say the idea wouldn't go away, so a condensed version of it, the idea, to suit athletes with limited time, is what I eventually put together. So it takes her a long time to get to this point, but it gives us the answer C, a short account of how a common concept evolved. So we have to ignore pretty much everything else that she said so far. And then finally, in number 20, Tessa and Ryan agree that a real champion is someone who, the answer we want is A, isn't afraid of taking a chance. First, Tessa says, Ray Bradbury used the image of standing on a high cliff and having to decide whether to walk away or to jump. Of course, he doesn't mean this literally, but he's talking about being a champion. And then Ryan replies by saying, there's no denying that. If you back away, you get nothing. But if you step off, you might actually fly. So this is the idea of taking a chance. Both of them mention it. But then there's a nice distraction for option C, which is this practices until perfection is reached. Most of what he says is connected to that. He says, it's often said that any decent athlete can become a champion by putting in the necessary time and effort. So you might start to think, aha, well that's definitely C. But remember that Tessa didn't say anything about this at all. So that means it's not this answer. And that's it. The same rules apply to other parts of the listening, that you need to listen for these synonymous expressions, you need to avoid distractions, you need to pay attention to the way the question is phrased. The challenge here is more organisational. You have a question and 4 possible answers, and you have to manage all of that as you're listening through twice. So the best thing here to do is to practice as much as possible. There is another sample test in the PDF that you've just downloaded, so it might be worth having a look at that. You'll find the answer key a few pages further on. Next time we're going to look at part 4 of the listening, which is the multiple matching task. Until then, thank you. Goodbye.